Alrighty. Yes, we are in Revelation 17 with hopes of getting through 17 tonight, but we'll see. I always hope we'll do more than we do, so but it'll be good. So Revelation 17 is the beginning of the end. I mean, I've sort of been gesturing toward that for a while now, but we really are at the beginning of the end, because the book of Revelation is going to end essentially with the original tale of two cities. You're going to have Babylon and the New Jerusalem, and they're going to kind of be juxtaposed against one another. So really everything through the beginning of chapter 9 or the beginning of chapter 18 is going to have to do with the New Jerusalem. I'm going to get my city straight, Babylon, and then everything after that's going to have to do with the New Jerusalem. So we have heard the story of redemption history. We have seen the judgment or the wrath of God being poured out. We're going to hear about the final judgment, and we're going to get the New Jerusalem, and that's what we have left in front of us. So we also are starting a section which I think is really unique because it sort of sets us up as we are preparing for marriage to the bridegroom. These last 4 chapters sort of give us 4 different ways or 4 different things that we should be aware of as we're preparing for that ultimate marriage when Christ comes back. So with all of that in mind, I do want us to try to get through chapter 17, partly because I don't want to break the image up across so many weeks, because this is kind of one big thing that I feel like we need to keep seeing. So remember, as we're looking at this, that we are presented, everything that John is seeing, we're presented it from a heavenly perspective, which means 1, it's bigger than our imaginations, and 2, God shows John things for how they really are, which may also be bigger than our imaginations a lot of the time. And so we'll talk about that as we go through this. So the first thing, this is chapter 17, the first thing we must do to be prepared as a bride for our bridegroom is that we cannot allow ourselves to be seduced by a love that won't last. That's a warning that was already given to the 7 churches way back in chapter 2 and chapter 3 when we were there. It is something that John is now picking up and bringing back here with this little scene that he's giving us about, now if you're looking at the good old King James, the great whore and the beast. The ESV is nicer, it says the great prostitute, but whatever, take your pick. Point is, this idea of being seduced by a false love is something that John continues to come back to. And if you think about John's gospel and John's letters, John's always concerned with loving something and prioritizing something above Jesus, or letting something else take the place of Jesus. And so that's really what he sees that has happened to those who dwell on the earth, the fallen world, so to speak. So let's read the first 6 verses and have a look. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came to me and said, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk." And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So a lot going on there for this gal on this beast, right? She is Babylon. I mean, that is the way that John wants us to understand this. She is Babylon, and Babylon is a symbol for the city of man. And what do we mean by the city of man? These are the people who are intent on living apart from God. John takes that a step further and says those who are intent on living apart from God are idolatrous. They have, if you'll pardon my phrasing here, they have gotten in bed with the wrong ideology. They are selling themselves out to the wrong thing, and they have made a prostitute of themselves and of that which they worship. So it says in that little description given to this girl, the mother,
this on the web.
I don't care, the mother of prostitutes. She's not just one among many. She is the embodiment of anything and everything, every false gospel, every false doctrine, everything that people, every excuse that people use not to believe in Jesus. I mean, anything that gets in the way of faith and belief in Jesus is wrapped up in this prostitute. And she's big time. I mean, she's not wearing costume jewelry. Look at that description again. She's arrayed in purple and scarlet. She's adorned with gold and jewels and pearls. She's in her hand, she has a golden cup. I mean, she's rich. But take notice of that cup. It's not fine wine, though we might expect it to be. She's got the blood of those who have refused her in that cup. It's the blood of the people who have seen her for what she is, and they have exposed her. It's the blood of those she has put to death who were patiently enduring persecution while waiting for the true bridegroom. It's the blood of the martyrs. And also in the cup is the evidence of the disgusting and degrading things she has done to obtain all the riches she has. The abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. So what John is painting for us and what he's seeing here is an image of somebody who is so totally depraved and god-awful that she's drinking the blood of those who were simply waiting on the Lord. I mean, y'all know I read Revelation differently than many of you do in here, but I can't help but think however we read Revelation, we know that there are people who are martyred for what they believe. And how much more will they be martyred during a time of tribulation for what they believe? And all it does, in some sense, if you want to read into it just a little, all it does is provide the fuel. Look, there's another martyr, there's another martyr, but they're not seeing them as martyrs, right? The world's not seeing those people as martyrs. It's good, we got another Christian down. Good, we got another Christian down. There goes that Christian testimony. We don't have that to worry about anymore. And she's drinking the blood of it. And she's drunk on it, it says. So now she's given herself this name, Babylon the Great. It's emblazoned across her forehead. That should kind of call to mind the mark of the beast, right? We've already seen things being written across the forehead before. Well, this is her identifying marker. Babylon the Great. We should know her. She's the daughter of Babel. These are the people who sought to build a tower to the sky to invade God's glory and take it for themselves. She's a daughter of Babylon itself. What did Nebuchadnezzar say about Babylon in Daniel chapter 4, verse 30? Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty. I mean, it is such that everything about Babylon, here represented as this prostitute, is all about me. And when we think about it, isn't that the way, I'm not trying to preach, but I feel like I am, but isn't that the way that we are? What Christianity and what Jesus asks of us is that we push ourselves to not think about ourselves first. Right? That we die to ourselves. I mean, that's literally the language of Christianity, that we die to ourselves. So, if we're not dying to ourselves, then we're making it all about ourselves. And there's the language there from Nebuchadnezzar. I have built by my mighty powers a royal residence for the glory of my majesty. Right? And it's this city who now has taken on the role of representing all the great sin in the world. So then look at what John says at the end of verse 6 and the beginning of verse 7. When I saw her, I marveled greatly, but the angel said to me, why do you marvel? And some translations there will say astonished, some of them will say amazed. John is a human, and he's seeing this, and she's beautiful, and she's alluring, and she's captivating. And John looks at her and he says, in effect, I get it. She looks really good. She seems fun. She seems powerful. We know she's a somebody. She's got all these riches and all this stuff going on.
My Bible says that I wondered with great admiration.
Yeah. There you go. Great admiration. You don't admire somebody that you don't think positively about, right? Some aspect of it. Now you might say, well, so-and-so's a real jerk, but I admire their ability to control X or Y. But that's not what John's saying. John's saying, I looked at her and wow. So even John the apostle, who's been translated up, caught up in the Spirit, taken out into the wilderness to see this thing. By the way, John makes reference to the fact that he's been caught up in the Spirit 4 times in the book of Revelation. He never wants us to forget that all of this is caused by the Spirit and is mediated by Jesus. I mean, that's the kind of the X and Y of all of it. But John, this powerful apostle, this guy who is on the island of Patmos because he has been exiled because of his testimony, all of that, looks at her and he says, I get it. I absolutely get it. So the angel comes around to tell John, and remember the context of this, we're still in the bigger picture of those 7 letters at the beginning of the book. And so this angel comes around to tell John in those 7 churches, be careful what you see. Be careful who you hitch your wagon to, so to speak, because what she really is may not be obvious from the way she presents herself. So that's what the angel says in verses 7 and 8. I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. She gets all of her power, all of her presence, all of her allurement, all of her adornment, all of it from the beast. Now we've seen this before when we got our first introduction back in chapter 13 to the dragon and the beast of the land and the beast of the sea. The beast of the land and the beast of the sea all have their power derived from the dragon. Right? So it is here. She gets her power from the beast that she's riding on. She doesn't have any natural power, doesn't have any power of her own. She's only operating on the power of literally the thing that supports her. And John or the angel here is playing on, remember that description of Jesus. The one who is, the one who was, and the one who is to come. So, the beast you saw was and is not and is about to rise, and then at the end, because it was and is not and is to come. Alright, so, again, the devil does a really good job of masquerading as Jesus. Or masquerading as the divine. It can look like it, can sound like it, can talk like it. Churches are full of it. I hate to tell you all, but churches are full of it. Because it looks and sounds right. And the angel says, be careful. This comes as much of a warning to the Christians as it does I use this word carefully, a judgment to the non-Christians. Because what John is very aware of, and what I think in his relation of all of this in this letter, is that Christians have and do become very comfortable with earthly power. We like it. We're not supposed to, but oh, that's really nice. Yeah, it's really good when it happens that way. I don't want to make this political, but I'm going to for just a minute. We like the evangelical majority label, or we did when it still existed. The evangelical right, those kinds of platforming kind of phrases that put us up above everybody else. If you're a Republican running for president, you've got to get the evangelical right or you're not going to win. I mean, it's power. Just that one little phrase alone is power. And we like that a lot. Some of the language that we use to describe the leaders whom we like puts them second to Jesus. And I don't want to point fingers or call any thoughts out or anything like that. But I don't know how many of you have seen it, but Trump is in court right now in New York or where, Manhattan, I think. And there was a court drawing that somebody did, and it had a picture of Trump and it had a picture of Jesus sitting next to him. And we're so quick to bring Jesus down and condemn Jesus with every politician that we like. And the reality of it is, Jesus' judgment and condemnation was a whole lot worse than Trump will ever get. Right? But we have combined that gospel, so to speak, to say, oh, well, I know Jesus is in the courtroom with Trump. I get that's, at the end of the day, that's the base level of that. But how many people see that and push it even further? That's what we do. I'm not saying that somebody's going to hell for thinking that way or anything like that. But that's what we do. We like to shoehorn our ways into power. And John says, be very careful with power. Because often where power comes from is not a place that the Christian wants to be. It's not a foundation that the Christian wants to build their life upon. So think back to chapter 13, to the beast that rises from the sea. That's the counterfeit Christ. Remember, that's the one that has the wound on its head that's mysteriously healed and all of that. That beast rises against Christ. It rises against his people through government, through ideology, through political force. That's who's propping up this woman. That's who's empowering this woman. So John tells us her identity and her intentions are not immediately evident on the surface. And so to grasp who she is and what she is determined to do requires us to look closely and to think very deeply. So now we'll pick up in verses 9 to 14. This calls for a mind with wisdom. Now this is still the angel. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. There are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. She's seated on 7 mountains. Now, I'm big on original context. John's first readers would have immediately picked up that he's talking about Rome. One of the things that Rome prided itself on was the city built on 7 hills. So, emblazoned across her forehead, Babylon. Geographically, Rome. What do we know about Rome? Rome is rich, and Rome likes to flex its power. Rome is attractive and alluring. It's the most powerful empire in the known world at the time. If you are a leader of some other territory, you want to be in good with Rome. You may not necessarily want to be conquered by Rome, but if you do get conquered by Rome, you're going to play really nice with the administration, because you don't want your little area to suffer, right? And if there are any promotions to be had, you really would like them very much. But Rome also becomes the seat of the most intense persecution against Christians. And I love this line. This comes from Nancy Guthrie. She said, it does this because every Babylon turns violent toward those who resist and expose her true ugliness. I mean, I always read this part of Revelation, and I can't help but think that it really doesn't matter, again, what your view of the end times is. This is a wake-up call to every government in captivity. This is the U.S. need not think it's special, because we're right here with Babylon. We're right here with Rome. It's alluring, it's attractive, and there are really good things about living in the United States, but there are also parts of the United States that we just really don't want to touch. We don't want to acknowledge, we just want it to be over there, and we can't do anything about that, it's over there, right? And why do we do that? Well, because if Christians actually maintain Christian principles and go forward and call out the nation and say, you know what, as a matter of fact, we don't want to go along with that, who gets the punishment? Not the nation, the church. This is where persecution starts. So, the other thing that John does that's really interesting here, and I'm not just up here beating on politicians in the country for no reason. John never tells us directly that this is Rome. He tells us she's seated on 7 hills. His implication is that it's Rome, but this is a timeless image because he doesn't say this is Rome. What he's instead saying is, over the course of history, there are going to be Babylons, there are going to be Romes. Regimes that have attracted masses of people. They have declared their own greatness, they have rejected any need for God, and they have oppressed those who, it says at the end of that section, are called and chosen and faithful. Right? Now, I'm sure in this little section you all are itching to know what in the heck does he mean by 7 kings here and 10 horns there and all this, that, and the other. Who knows? I'm not trying to give you a short answer. Some people have tried to count Roman emperors. Problem is, you have to decide where the first one is or where the last one is so you can count backward. But given the rest of the text, starting to count backward doesn't do you any good because 5 of them have fallen, 1 is, the other one hasn't yet come. So you have to figure out where all of this is happening for John. If you base it solely on John's own timeline, it doesn't make any sense. The leadership doesn't play out like it needs to. So what does he mean? I don't know. I think John has a real, the vision itself, the revelation, has a real tendency toward patterns of 7. And, some people like to read these 7 kings alongside the trumpets and the bowls that were, because 5 of them have happened, then, we're in the 6th trumpet or we're in the 6th bowl or whatever like that. I don't know that necessarily works either. I think the crux of that, and I think this is one of those places where you get caught in the weeds if you aren't careful, is that last bit. The other one has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain only a little while. The power has a spot where it stops. God has authority, God has sovereignty, God has ultimate power. And when God says, you don't get to have your power anymore, that's it. Whoever that person is doesn't get to have their power anymore. Or if we are to read this as nations, whoever that nation is doesn't get to have their power anymore because God has said no more.
We all have our opinion about, and it's good to speculate, it's interesting, but we don't know. It's like you said, I realize the different books that are out there. So we watch a lot of prophecy shows,
right.
And I was listening to something last week, and they were talking about the age of the earth.
Yeah.
6,000 million years old. Well, I don't have an issue with that. Somebody was to ask me, my answer would be yes.
Yeah.
It could be 1 billion years old. Who's to know what happened? Because the Bible's not written as a day event, a week event, a year event.
Right.
We're talking 4,000 years. So.
Sure.
But anyway, I was thinking a couple of weeks ago, I think it's done more damage. Confusion. I like David Jeremiah and people like that. And they write books. People that you've mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've never heard of them, but they write books and they got their opinion. But I think it has done more damage to the church. I like to go through Facebook, you know about my escapades. You know,
Not you.
I'm not a lot anymore. So God said told me last night, they're going to get you. That's what I said, but it wasn't that big a deal. But I got things that I kind of believe in that I can see they're possible.
Yeah.
It ain't normal. It ain't really that I actually believe in. Because we, just like you said,
Yeah.
we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. John could have been talking about wrong.
Yeah.
But in our day and time, a modern day Babylon could be New York City.
Yeah.
I've thought about New York City when we get into chapter 18.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's everything come in? Prophecy has a tendency to repeat itself.
It does.
Sometimes there's more than one event. But anyway, it's like I've been kind of talking about in our Sunday school class. Our problem, though we don't understand it, but we need to be in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever the Lord's going to reveal to us, He's
Right.
going to reveal to us. But these books and all that's out there, though I might read some of them, find them interesting. And,
Yeah.
okay, they could be that way, I don't know. But it's confusing people, and then they all,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I mean, I love to talk about it,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Let's talk about it. That's what I tell the class, let's talk about it. We're all different, we all think different ways, and we don't talk enough
Right.
about things and what's really important
Mhm.
in the gospel.
Well, I'm going to put on my Minister of Education hat for just a minute and say that my assessment on all that is we can't talk about anything because churches bring people to the knowledge of Christ, or they do their job in bringing people to the knowledge of Christ, and they absolutely fail at discipleship. So what happens is you have a whole bunch of baby, immature Christians going out in the world reading all of this stuff, and they don't know how to discern. And so they go out there and they get a hold of a whole bunch of gobbledygook, and it may all be good stuff. But when you don't know the difference between somebody like me, who reads Revelation one way, and somebody like David Jeremiah, who reads it another way, you start, if I wrote a book and they read one of his books and tried to put them together, it's not going to work. Except at a few points, because we understand it differently. That's fine. I'm not saying there's a thing in the world wrong with having different interpretations. We wouldn't have denominations if people didn't have different interpretations. But what it has done is put the church on its heels in terms of cultural effectiveness, because our people don't even know what the gospel is, and they're out here trying to talk about the end times.
Exactly, that's what we're talking about. It's good to go through this. I appreciate you for doing it. I won't say you got the goods, because that wasn't the right terminology. You know, I don't think you like that too well. They were just crazy.
I'll take it.
You got the willingness to.
Right.
And a lot of people don't. Prophecy is important. Fourth of the Bible. Look at prophecy.
Right.
And I put it in there for a reason. But we should just, all these ideas and these books are harming. Because people nowadays, more and more, even in the church, they really don't want to hear the truth.
Mm-mm.
They don't. They want to be compromised. They want to. You got people that have corrupted it.
Right.
These homosexual churches. Andy Stanley.
Yeah.
Now he's nothing like Charles, his daddy. I mean, this guy is way.
Yeah, he is.
I watched
He is.
a little bit on him. But these people preaching that have corrupted the Word of God.
Mm.
And now there's talk of AI rewriting the Bible.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Harari, who is an atheist. He's a Jewish homosexual, part of the world that I've heard seen him on video.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one day it's possible that
Mm-hmm.
AI or ChatGPT, people need to stay away from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Preachers are using it
I know.
today, and they need to keep away from that.
Yep.
What are they doing?
ChatGPT and AI, some are helping them using it
To write their sermons.
Sermon outlines.
You're kidding.
Mm-mm.
And it's good if it about the Bible, if they're studied in the Word, I mean, I research. He can research.
Yeah, all this doesn't just happen.
Write stuff down, but it's getting back.
Yeah.
You know, I heard.
We got to know what this says. If
Right.
we hear a preacher, and I've heard some, you know, and I don't listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
But something will be said that person will say, and I'm thinking, that don't fit with Scripture in my mind.
Right.
You know, so we got to be able to discern a certain, maybe not full blown, but no like discernment.
Right. Well, it's one of those things too. I mean, we've kind of just looked at this, and we'll look at the last few verses in just a second. But I don't want to say pastors, because they're not pastors if they're doing this, but those who have been given a pulpit a lot of times are the chief among, I want the power, I want the authority, I want the platform, I want the name. You know, and then you get the Joel Osteens, and you get the Andy Stanleys, and you get the Kenneth Copelands, and the Creflo Dollars, and not just them. I mean, those are the ones we like to pick on, but not just them.
Like we said in our Sunday schools, the door can get cracked, and if we're not careful, it'll be wide open before we know it.
Yep.
And that's what's happened, my opinion only, to our churches today.
Mm-hmm.
They have allowed a little of this, a little of that, and a little of the other, and accepted it, and it's taken away from God.
It is. It is.
I'm for this.
Yep.
We have been looking a little bit at Satan today in our Sunday school class, and there was a 2009 survey done that said 75% of our clergy do not believe that Satan is real.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah, I know, I won't call his name, but I know a pastor in Hattiesburg who has no doctrine of sin. I mean, just full stop. You can disappoint God, you can hurt God's feelings, but you can't actually sin against God because of Jesus. And he just totally, in my opinion, misappropriates the crucifixion and redemption all the way around to say, you know, you don't sin anymore because everybody's going to be saved, but you can disappoint him, and you should live your life in a way to make him proud. I'm sorry. Right?
It'd be like somebody like the ones in the Jews, and there's Orthodox Jews today, that the law, that's more law-oriented than it is gospel-oriented. You know, the rabbis believed if they studied enough the law, they had the ability, and we don't, none of us, they had the ability, they can overcome evil desires and have a clear conscience, pure conscience.
Well, I mean, it's Paul.
Paul contradicts that.
Yeah, it's Paul himself. As to the law, I was blameless. You know, I mean, that's what he says about himself. Well, there's an impulse and a reason to keep all 613 Jewish laws. I mean, you know, he's trying to get something. Right?
That teaching, think about it, that teaching is still out today. The law of attraction.
Yeah.
And anybody can Google stuff. I'm a big Googler and researcher.
Yeah.
Be careful, try to be careful.
Right.
I got a certificate.
He does.
So,
certified.
the law of attraction, that is just identical to Greek philosophers.
Right.
The Stoics and all that bunch back then.
Right.
They believe that if I want to be wealthy, if I think
Name it and claim it.
Get in touch with nature and the universe.
Yep.
Mysticism.
Right.
Junk. That if I can think wealth, I'm going to be wealthy. This one's a start.
Yep.
Joel Osteen is, I'm thinking, he's inclined influenced by a lot of that.
Oh yeah, any of those prosperity gospel people are.
Because Apostle Paul out behind one of the urinals in his church and walk out 300
Right.
Yeah.
Has anybody got any money hid over here? Do we need to go find it?
It's just to go show something. It's nothing new.
No.
He's using the same thing he used in the garden.
I got a question.
Not enough. I mean, that's just.
Yeah,
I
speaking
guarantee you less than 5%.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Speaking of Joel Osteen and
Yeah.
his charismatic personality, now I could follow him.
Oh
If
yeah.
I didn't know what his
Oh yeah. He's fun.
And he is.
Yep.
Yeah.
He is.
Oh,
Great.
funny.
I watched him toward the end.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She was gonna send him some money. Yeah.
Well, that's all. I mean, Jim Baker was the same way. You know, like I don't know why anybody follows Kenneth Copeland though. He's creepy.
I made a statement before that really opened my eyes to the shape that the United States is headed for God. I drove from St. Louis, Missouri to Winston-Salem, North Carolina on Sunday. 95% of the church that I passed during church time, the parking lot was empty, and the doors were closed.
Yep.
And this was before COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, we that was in 2014.
We just use COVID as an excuse, but anyway, let's read these last three. Yeah.
He might make it.
And the angel said to me, by the way, let me back up just for a minute. On this prostitute sitting on this beast, what the angel reveals to John is the beast is going to turn on her. The beast hates her, she's just a useful tool. And the beast is going to turn on her. So that's what this next bit is. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. So as good as she looks, as happy as she makes people feel, whatever like that, at the end of the day, the beast is going to turn on her. And I hate to use this terminology in a discipleship class, but effectively what the angel says is her pimp is going to turn on her. He's not taking care of her. He's going to turn on her. Her beautiful clothes will be gone. She's going to be left naked and exposed, and she's literally going to get eaten. She's going to get devoured by the very thing that she fueled. And he's going to devour and burn her. And then all of those who have joined themselves to her by committing this spiritual adultery are in danger of being burned too. I mean, that is the full scope of it. And so he says, again, I think as a reminder to the church, and I'm in a hush after I say this, but as a reminder to the church, he says, be careful what power you hit your wagon to. You know, is it God ordained, or does it look pretty? Because what looks pretty is not necessarily always, all that glitters is not gold, right? And that's sort of the deal here, is we have to be careful. And that's why I think whenever we come to things, what do we want to, I don't want to say, well, I guess I'll put it that way. We have to be very careful with how we do church outreach. We have to be very careful with how we do church inreach. We have to be very careful how we interact with other churches, because any of that is a real easy misstep to going a direction we don't need to go. You know, now I'm all for doing all of that. Don't get me wrong, but our preaching, our teaching, our outreach, our inreach, the whole scope of the church's existence has to have Jesus at the center of it. And sometimes Jesus at the center of it is going to look at you and say, not right now. Not like that, not right now. Even though it seems like all the other ducks are in a row. You know, and we have to be ready for that, and we have to be prepared for that. Because we don't want to be in danger of being burned too. Because if we are as dedicated and faithful as we should be, we'll recognize it. I mean, that's the story of the end times in a lot of ways. There will be deception, great deception, for those who do not love the Lord. For those of us who do, if we're here when the Antichrist and all that shows up, the deception will not affect us. We'll recognize it. Nobody will listen to us, because they will be so deceived by what's going on. By the way, that's already here. we just mentioned a whole bunch of it. So, all right, let me pray real quick and we'll get out of here. Gracious God,